deal. Me too, actually. That's awesome. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna learn about Jesus, and we're gonna learn all kinds of different things. And you're just gonna have to be attentive, okay? First of all, before we ever start, how many of you think the decorations on the stage are just too cool? You give her a big hand. So Amber's going to be leading you in singing, and she's actually the one that did all that, okay? So if you run past her sometime during the week, tell her she did a good job, okay? All right, so we're going to have opening prayer. So little ones that are 4, 5, and 6, or 3, 4, 5, and 2, and all that. Okay, everybody look this way. We're going to pray, so we're going to bow our heads and close our eyes, okay? All of you, let's bow our heads and close our eyes. We're going to talk to Jesus. Father, thank you for this privilege we have of just being able to be at Vacation Bible School. Thank you for each one that's in this room, for each adult, each child, and each baby that's in this room tonight. Thank you for their lives. And we pray, Lord, throughout this week, that you would make yourself real to them, and that they would know that they have had a week where Jesus was the visitor. Jesus, not the visitor, but Jesus was here, and his presence was here, and they can feel that, and they can know that Jesus anointed these services this week. Pray, Lord, that you be with us throughout the evening. Help us as we sing, and then as we have stories that tell about your word, and then as we do other fun things. I pray that you would help the children to be attentive, and help us as adults to have patience, and to show the love of Jesus. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we're going to have Anna and Regina come, and they're going to teach you your theme song, and they're going to teach you some other songs, and there's motions, so don't get crazy, but have a good time. Anna and Regina?
Welcome to the first evening of VBS. We're glad to have you here. And if you've been on the first night of VBS before, it can be like learning all kinds of new songs, but by the end of the week, you guys will know them by heart, and you'll go home and sing them all the time. So we're going to learn our theme song this week is Your Power Will Pull Us Through.
We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. You make us whole, and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey, there's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Oh, 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 oh. Wide open spaces for wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. Oh, 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 oh. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. You make us whole, and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey, there's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Oh, 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 oh. Wide open spaces for wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. Oh, 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 oh. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull
All right, we're gonna sing it again.
Okay, so all the motions now.
So every time you do trust, you do it like a
We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life lasts forever. You make us whole and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey. There's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Oh, 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 oh. Wide open spaces, we're wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. Oh, oh, oh. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life lasts forever. You make us whole and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey. There's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Oh, 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 oh. Wide open spaces, we're wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. Oh, oh, oh. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life lasts forever. You make us whole and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you.
All right, this next one's called This Train is Bound for Glory. And the motions are really simple. You're moving your hands like you are the train, like you're pushing the wheels or train wheels. Every time it's like this train is bound for glory, this train. Okay? So every time you hear glory, you put your hands up in the air like towards heaven. So this train is bound for glory, this train, and then repeat itself. So simple motions.
This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. 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 Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. Okay, now let's bring it down. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. Oh, this train. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in
watching you. I asked Chris to do your class, and I asked Kelsey to do this one, so that's the only two people I got to. Other than that, you're hearing. They're watching to see who's good. There's going to be a boy and a girl from each class every evening that's going to have the possibility of getting a prize for quiet seat. What does quiet seat involve? It involves listening. It involves sitting still. It involves participating when there's something going on up front, like the girls are singing, you're supposed to be participating. But most importantly, it's that you have your good listening ears on and that you're listening to the stories and you're participating, you're raising your hand when you want to speak instead of just speaking out loud. Those are all the things that go into quiet seat, and we have a bunch of prizes in one of those suitcases up there that you get to choose from if you chose it, okay? So that's that part. Up on this wall, we're not finished putting the things up yet, but up on this wall, does anybody see that black line up there? Okay, so how many of you have a friend that is not here? Do you have a friend that's not here? Well, we have some potential. Okay, so tomorrow you invite that friend to come, okay? You can put your hands down. You invite that friend to come, and we're going to put trains on those tracks. There's going to be one on each side, and you're going to put trains up on those tracks, and we're going to see whose train is the longest at the end of the week. And then you are going to get a prize, whatever side's train is the longest, okay? So if you bring a visitor, you get a train car, and whoever's train gets to be the longest is the one that gets to be the winner, okay? So it's called a competition, so you need to find friends if you don't have any. Just kidding. All right, and we're going to do an offering project, which you'll hear about later from Linda and Ray, and they'll tell you all about that. And then each night, have you looked around? Do you see like these big animals up here that have very big eyes and are staring at you? Do you see them around? Well, the animal that we're going to talk about tonight is actually out in the foyer. When you came in, he's standing out there by the mountains. Might be a he, might be a she, I don't know, I didn't ask. Anyway, he's standing out there by the mountains, and it's called a ram, or a buckhorn sheep. Did you see it when you came in? Had those big, long, curly horns? Okay, well that's what we're going to talk about tonight. You didn't see it? Well, when you leave, you're going to have to look for it, okay? But until then, you can look on the screen here a little bit, and you're going to see a bunch of them, all right? But we have a special visitor tonight that is going to be getting off the train back there. Do you see that train station back there? We have a special visitor. She's going to love me. Her name is Bertha for tonight. Bertha's going to get off the train, and Bertha's going to come up, and she's going to tell you some fun facts about the buckhorn sheep. And while she's telling you those fun facts, Luke is going to be showing you these pictures of the buckhorn sheep, okay? So Bertha, did you get off that train yet?
They're taking my... They let me off the train before I gave them back my cup of coffee. Well, do I have something to tell you this evening? I'm Bertha, obviously. Anyway, I just came from the Rocky Mountains. And can anyone tell me what I just saw while I was in the Rocky Mountains? You in the white shirt. Well, what's on the picture there? Can you tell me what that is? Can anyone tell me what these things are? In pink? They would be offended. They ain't sheep. Orange shirt. Oh, but what?
That's what I call them.
Huh?
That's what I call them.
You call them color. They are big horn sheep. Okay, can you say that with me? Big horn sheep. Not buckhorn, not sheep. They're big horn sheep. Okay. So, as I said, they live in the Rocky Mountain areas, and there is some really awesome things you need to know about these things. Don't be looking over there and look here. What do you look like now? Listen to what I have to say. Okay, obviously, you can see what big horns are known for. They're big, curly hair. Right? No? But it's a big, curly hair. Yeah, it's horns. I'm just making sure you're paying attention. Big horns. And you want to know something really cool that they do with these horns?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. First off, I need you to picture their size. So, they say big horn sheep, they're as big as me. Okay? If I was on 4 legs, you know what I mean? They are 6 feet. They measure 6 feet from their horns all the way to their tail. and they weigh darn just as much as me. So they about look like me, just I'm pretty. Anyway, so when they get into fights, at home, you guys pinch your siblings, and then you tattle and tell mom that someone else did it. When they get into arguments, they back up, and they come at each other, and bam! They hit each other in the head. They ram each other in the head. For fun, for argument's sake. Don't try that at home, you'll get a concussion. But I think that's pretty interesting, how they settle fights. That is how they do it. Anyway, so, moving on. What's the next thing I was going to tell you? Their feet are really cool. They have split hooves. And let me tell you, even though they're that big, their balance, they're like ballerinas. Their balance is so incredible that they can balance on 2 inches of rock without falling. Like if they were on a little skinny rock, they'd be up there. And they wouldn't fall because their split hooves help them balance wherever they are. Okay? Also, that's too far down. Okay. They have incredible eyesight. Y'all, 20/20 vision, think your good eyesight's good? These bighorns can see a mile away. A mile. That's incredible. That's like walking out into the road to church and seeing past the stop sign that's down that way. Like, that's pretty incredible that they can see that far. Okay, also, they're ninjas. You want to hear how awesome this is? They can jump 20 feet, like from mountaintop to mountaintop. So I'm just going to call it mountaintop because the word escaped me. So they can jump 20 feet. So not only are they have amazing eyesight, settle arguments by butting heads, they can jump that far. I think that is pretty incredible. They're like agile, and they say that they can run. Okay, we're talking mountains. How many of you guys have gone hiking? Okay. Well, some of those hiking trails out there, I don't know about you, but like 5 minutes in, I'm like, I'm out of shape. These mountains, let me sure I say this right. Bighorn sheep can run up a mountain at 15 miles an hour. That's how incredibly strong they are. So they're ninjas and they're ballerinas. They're like superheroes, aren't they? Basically. So anyway, they live in herds, and these herds, they live separated. So the boys, there's a boys club, and then there's a girls club. They don't all live together, they're separated, okay? So the boys live in one spot, and the girls live in the other. And you know how you have that one friend who just always has to be the boss? I mean, like, they always gonna tell you what to do. Why can't I pick? Because I say so. You know those types of people? Well, in these herds, these bighorn sheep, in the male ones, because us females don't do that. In the male ones, they have to have a boss. And so to figure out who's going to be the boss, they go up against each other. And it says that it can last for hours. They keep bashing. They'll pick one person, whoever the other person is that wants to come up against them and be like, yo, I'm going to be the boss. And the other's like, no, I'm going to be the boss. So they spend hours just running at top speed, boing, 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 until finally either one of them are injured or one of them just like, I ain't putting up with this no more. And he walks away because there always has to be a boss, okay? Okay, so. Okay, there went my mind. All right. All right, so. Rams, anyone tell me what they eat? Ethan? Very good. They eat grass. They like to eat grass and anything they greenery like that they see up there. Yes, I'm going to cover this. Okay, so you know how your mom always tells you, close your mouth when you're chewing. Don't chew with your mouth open. Or we have the ever gum chewers. Yeah, you know when that is, can you imagine this is how they eat? This is pretty cool, but this would be pretty annoying. They can't just swallow their food once like you and me. They got ripped back into their mouth and they chew it up some more and then they swallow it again. I thought that was cool. It's called regurgitation. Don't try that at home either. But anyway, that's what they have to do. They cannot just swallow their food once. They have to do it twice. So back up the first and they chew it for a little while and then they swallow it again. Okay, also, we're going to talk about the females now. They are pregnant for about 25 weeks, lucky them. And when their babies are born, they're basically like what you've seen, if you've seen cows or horses be born, they can walk when they're born. And they get to stay with their mom. Now mind you, what was I gonna say? Oh my goodness, what's my mind? They get to stay with their mom for 6 months. And then they can either be in the mom's club or the boys cool with kids club. So that's how that works. They at least get to stay with their moms for 6 months. Anyway, also, can anyone tell me how long they live to be? How old they can be? You there? How old do you think they live to be? Just give me a number. 29? Is that what you said? Well, that's actually pretty old in bighorn years, but that's close. They live to be 10 to 19 years old. That's how old they live to be. But anyway, so isn't that pretty incredible about these animals? You learn something new. They're as big as me. They can balance. They can jump, and they can see. Incredible. And they settle arguments by bashing their heads together. I mean, they've got it going on. But anyway, I need to get going or I'm going to miss my train, so I'm going to see you all later.
All right, I am looking for somebody who thinks they can look really mean. Who thinks they can look really mean? All right, let's see. Zach, I don't think you can look mean. But I tell you what, I can use you, Zach. So how about you and the boy in the green come on up here? Okay? Can you give me your mean look? All right, that's good. That's good. All right, there we go. All right, now you can stand right here for now. Zach, can you look scared? All right, that'll do. Can you knock your knees together? That might help you look scared. Huh? All right. This is not your mom addressing. There. All right. Now you can stand over here. All right. Now, when Bertha, I love that name. When Bertha was talking about rams, do you think those rams are powerful? Do you think they're powerful? When they butt their heads together, do you think they're powerful? Well, in a little bit, you're going to learn the verse for tonight, and it talks about God giving us the power to do hard things. God giving us power. Because sometimes God asks us to do things and we don't think we can. And that's what our story is about tonight. About 2,000 years ago, there was a man named Saul. It was after Jesus had walked here on earth and Jesus had given his life on the cross and risen back to heaven. And the church, the believers in Jesus, they were growing. People were believing in Jesus. And as that was happening, they started to be persecuted for believing in Jesus. Everybody didn't like that. And so there were people that started putting them in jail for believing in Jesus. And in some cases, worse than that, for believing in Jesus. And one of the guys that started doing a lot of that, his name was Saul. Meet Saul. Now, Saul was an educated guy. He could seem like a really nice guy, but Saul could be mean. Can you be mean? Yeah, like that. Every time I say mean, I want you to look mean. All right. Saul can be really mean. And Saul went around putting people in jail that believed in Jesus. And he was doing this mainly in a city called Jerusalem. And after he got done throwing all kinds of people in jail in Jerusalem, there was a neighboring town called Damascus. And Saul thought he would go to Damascus and he would see if he could find any believers there and he would throw them in jail. And so Saul started walking towards Damascus. Walk with me. Saul started walking toward Damascus, and all of a sudden he was almost in the town, and this great big light shone out of heaven, blinded him, dropped him on the ground. Can you fall down? Dropped him on the ground, and he heard this voice saying, Saul, Saul. He said, who is it? And the voice said, Saul, it's the Lord, the one you are persecuting. Why do you keep making it so hard for yourself, Saul? And Saul realized that he had been throwing the wrong people in jail. That Jesus really was alive and real. Nobody else in Saul's group heard anything. And when it was all over, Saul went to get back up, and he realized there was a problem. Saul was now blind. Saul couldn't see. Saul had never felt, that too tight? No? Okay. Saul had never felt that helpless in all of his life because his helpers had to lead him around, and they led him into the city of Damascus, and they put him in a house, and there he sat. He was blind. For 3 days, he sat in that house. For 3 days, he had a chance to think that he had been persecuting the wrong people, that he really thought he was doing the right thing, and in fact, he was going against God. Now, in the city of Damascus, there was this nice believer named Ananias. And Ananias had a family, and life was going along pretty good. And one day, God said to Ananias, Ananias, yes, Lord. Ananias, I want you to go over to the house where Saul is. And I want you to pray for him that he would receive his sight back. Ananias was like, oh no. Do you think you can do that? Oh no. Can you make your knees knock? Let's try it. Oh no. Look at him like you're scared when you do it. Oh no. Ananias was like, oh no. Why do you think he would have been scared? Why do you think he would have been scared? Huh? He didn't want to get put in jail, right? What had Saul been doing? Here, let him see your mean face again. Go ahead. You can do it with just your mouth. Yeah, he's trying to grit his teeth. Okay. What had Saul been doing? He'd been putting people in jail. How many of you want to go to jail? Yeah, I don't think you'd like it when you got there. I don't think you'd like it when you got there. The food isn't really good, and you can't go out and play. It's not very nice. Ananias didn't want to go to jail. In fact, it was worse than that. He had heard about a guy that had gotten killed, and Saul just stood there and watched it. Ananias didn't want to get killed. And then Ananias was like, oh my goodness, this guy, and he even said to the Lord, he said, Lord, are you sure about this? Because this Saul guy is a really mean guy. Can you help me out? This Saul guy is a really mean guy. Lord, I don't really, why do you want me to do this again? Ananias needed some serious power to do something hard because he was scared. And I said, okay, I'm going. So Ananias went over to the house where Saul was. He knocked on the door. He knocked on the door. He knocked on the door. Somebody let him in, and he walked in, and there was Saul. He was blind, but he still looked mean. At least to Ananias. And Ananias put his hands on Saul, and he said, Saul? Because I don't think he knew whether as soon as Saul got his sight back, like, what would he do? Would he jump up and say, you're arrested? I don't know. Ananias trusted the Lord to do something hard, and Ananias said, Saul, the Lord has asked me to come here and pray for you that you would receive your sight. And so Ananias prayed, Saul, in the name of the Lord, receive your sight. And just like that, Saul received his sight. And he didn't jump up and say, you're arrested. In fact, it says the very first thing that he did was the Holy Spirit of the Lord filled Saul, and they took him out and they baptized him as a believer. And Saul was recognized as a believer just like Ananias. And they sat down together and had a meal together. They ate things together. And Saul stood up and he began to walk along with the believers in Damascus and teach about Jesus. Doing something hard. And that wasn't long after that Saul left the town of Damascus and went back to the town of Jerusalem. And there they were scared too. And in the town of Jerusalem, it took one believer, a guy by the name of Barnabas, and he did something hard too. He actually recommended Saul to the rest of the believers and said, look, Saul isn't going to hurt you. Saul's no longer going to throw you in jail. Saul believes on Jesus just like you do. But you know, Ananias did something very, very hard that day. And in order to do it, he had to have the power of God. So as you think about that big ram with those great big curly horns and the power, the muscles that they have, as you learn your verse a little later and it talks about the power of God, I want you to think sometimes to do the right thing is hard. To say the right thing is hard. To not tell a lie is hard. To stay out of trouble sometimes is hard. And when God asks you to do something hard, you can do it with His power. Thank you.
And this video that we're going to watch, that has the lyrics on, actually has someone showing you the motions, so follow them, because there's a lot of motions. And we're going to sing this song 20 minutes a week. It's called The Same Power. So you can stand up, and we're going to sing that again. It's more of a slow song, but it's about God's power.
Power that
verse that we have up here tonight and make a verse out of it?
Roll on my shirt. And black on my shirt.
Okay, so you guys can work together to let's remember that verse as quickly as possible. What do you think this first word might be? Help them out there. Okay. Actually, they would put that there. Probably won't put that there. I'll just encourage you to keep that there. Oh, no, leave that one. No. That one was where it's supposed to be. Put that one back up there, and we'll continue from there. There you go. For I can do everything through Christ who gives. All right.
Okay. All right, so let's say together, let's start at the top and we'll end where it's bound. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. It's okay. All right, let's say it again, start from the top. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Philippians 4:13. All right, should we just okay, you want to do it? Okay, we're going to do side to side. June's going to lead that side, and I'll lead this side. So we'll start out with 4. We jump up, so everyone says it together. 4, sit down, June side. You do popcorn, okay? And then everyone stands for the reference for Philippians 4:13. Okay, ready? Let's get ready. 4, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Philippians 4:13.
I think we do that a little louder.
Okay, all right, so now when we say it, let's see which side we do loudest. You say the loudest, all right? Okay, so let's start with our side. You guys ready? We hear you, okay? 4, I can do
tonight and throughout the week, I'm going to tell you this story called God Provides. It's the story of a man called George Mueller, okay? His name was George Mueller. And then we're going to learn everything there was to know about George Mueller, okay? George heard the slamming of the door outside. He knew that his father was about to come through that door, and he was standing at the top of the stairs, and he was ready. Father came through the door, and immediately he saw him. George, aren't you even ashamed? Couldn't you even hide? Why should I be ashamed? Why, as a matter of fact, I'm not ashamed. What I am wondering is, well, I'm wondering about you. Well, I don't have anything to be ashamed about. You're the one that was in prison. You're the one that just got out of prison. Did you learn anything while you were there? I did, as a matter of fact. I learned two things for sure. I learned that German food is disgusting, and it tastes awful. And I also learned another thing. I learned how much you love me. Did you have to leave me in there for months? Couldn't you have paid the fine before that? Did I have to stay in there so long? Well, George, it's like this. You're barely 18 years old, and you've been in trouble with the law over and over and over again. And I just wonder when you're ever going to learn your lesson. You know, if your mother was still alive, she would be so disappointed in what you were doing. I'm really glad that she's not here to see how you're acting. George felt a little guilty because he loved his mom. He really had loved his mom. So he felt a little bit guilty. But then he looked at his dad and he spit back and he said, yeah, but look at you. All you do is you work as a tax collector. You work for the government. That's not a very good job. Well, as a matter of fact, it might make you money, but it doesn't make you a very prestigious person. That made his father angry. And his father grabbed a club off the wall and he went after George. But of course, George was younger and he could get away from him. George felt guilty for a little while, for about, well, probably about a day. That guilt was eating him a little bit, that he was a disappointment to his mom. But then he forgot all about it. And he went back to his ways. You see, George's dad wanted him to be a minister, ironically. He wanted him to be a minister because ministers made lots of money where he was from. And that's what his dad wanted him to do. So George was actually going to school to become a minister. But George didn't really care. Because boys and girls, the thing that George did not have is he didn't have a relationship with Jesus. So he was just doing it because that's what his dad wanted. And so he would do that during the day. He would go to school and he would do his lessons. And then at night he would be found in the taverns. And he would be drinking and partying and having a great time. So he thought. This particular night he was in the tavern, he was telling a big story. It was huge. It wasn't even true. But he was making it up as he went. And it was making him, it was getting him all the attention that he wanted. When all of a sudden somebody looked at him and said, wait a minute, George. Hey, Betta, why don't you come on down here? You said you wanted to be different. You wanted to be able to party. You wanted to be able to drink like the best. Why don't you come on down here and sit by George? George will tell you exactly how to do that. George looked down and when he saw the guy at the end of the table, he went, wait a minute, I know that person. Where do I know that person from? And all of a sudden, the guy at the end of the table spoke up and he said, I already know George Mueller. I know all about George Mueller. And when he spoke like that, George knew who it was. This was the kid he went to high school with. This was the kid that always carried his Bible through high school and always would say, George, I want to pray for you because you're such a bad person. You're never going to make yourself out to be anything, but I want to pray for you. Maybe God can change your life. That's who that was. And George was like, what are you? But he didn't say anymore because Betta said, why don't you continue with your story, George? I'm listening very closely. And so George did. He finished his story, and after they left the tavern that night, he met Betta out in the parking lot. Betta looked at him and he said, George, I bet you never thought you were going to see me in a tavern, did you? Well, to be really honest, no, guess I didn't, because you were always the goody two-shoes in high school. You were the one that did everything right. So no, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Well, George, I've just made a decision. And that decision is I've decided that I a little bit. And so I thought I'd look you up because they say that you're the best partier in town. So why don't we become friends, George? Why don't we become good friends? Sounds like a plan to me. I can teach you anything you need to know, George said. And for a while after that, they were friends. They actually got close and they became good friends. They got so close and became such good friends that two of Betta's friends, and George and Betta, decided that they would go and they would hike in Switzerland. So they all took their money pouch. Then they took all of their money pouches, put them into one money pouch that they let George hold on to. Do you think that's a good idea? I didn't think that was a good idea, but they thought it was a great idea because George was the smart one. He was going to college and he knew how to handle money. Well, they thought he knew how to handle money and he knew how to count. That was important. You had to count, had to know how much money you had. What they didn't realize is they were hiking and when they would get tired and they would lay down on the hillside to take a little bit of a rest, George would reach into each one of their pouches and pull a little bit of coins out and stick it into his. Every time, nobody knew. So this one particular day, they were resting and George looked around and everybody seemed to be like, had their eyes closed and they were resting. And so he began to reach into everybody else's pouch and began to pull out coins and put into his own pouch. When all of a sudden Ben looks up and said, "Hey, George, what are you doing?" George froze. "Oh no, we're in the middle of the mountains. What are they going to do to me?" But being George, he said, "Oh, well, I'm just organizing. I'm trying to keep everything straight, and I'm just organizing." Ben said, "Oh, great. You know, we're so lucky to have you along. We're so lucky to have you holding on to our money. That's great, George. That's great." And he rolled back over and went to sleep. George sighed. "Oh, almost got caught. I'm going to have to be a little more sly on that one." They did their whole trip, and nobody ever found out that George was taking money out of their pouches. They got back from Switzerland, and they were at the tavern. And it was time to go home. And as they walked out the door, George looked at Ben and he said, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow." "Oh, well, and his eyes got really big, and he stuttered all over himself in bed and said, I can't come tomorrow." "What do you mean you can't come tomorrow? You spend every night with me at the tavern." "Well, George, when I said that I wanted to live life a little, that didn't mean that I wanted to, throw everything away. I just wanted to try a little. So, tomorrow night I'm going to Wagner's house." "Well, you don't have to go to his house. Just bring him with you. I'd love to meet Wagner." "Really?" "Well, yeah. I love meeting new people." "Well, then why don't you come with me?" "Well, where are we going to go?" "Well, to Wagner's house. We're having a prayer meeting." "You're going to a prayer meeting? Are you kidding me?" "No, I'm really not. We're going to go to a prayer meeting. You're welcome to come if you want." George was thinking in his mind, "Of course I'll go. I'll go and I'll just make fun of all those people. Those silly people thinking they want a prayer meeting. I'll go, sure. Sure, I'll meet you there. Just tell me where the address is." And so he gave me the address. And the next night, George found himself at Wagner's door. Wagner welcomed him in and said, "George, it's really great to have you here. Just come on in." And as he walked in, he looked around. And he thought, Christians are these old fuddy-duddy people who are just so boring. But as he looked around, he went, "Wait a minute. These men in this room are businessmen. They're very distinguished men. Are they really Christians? Can Christians look like that?" So Wagner made all the introductions, and he's looking around, and he introduced George to all the people, and then he looked at Mr. Rogers and he said, "Rogers, I would like you to pray." And George was shocked because here's this very distinguished, dressed-up man in a suit, and he turns around in his seat, and he kneels down, and he begins to pray. And as he begins to pray, George is like, "Wait just a minute. What is going on?" It was like Mr. Rogers was talking to someone in the room, and George opened his eyes, and he looked around, and no, his eyes were closed, but he was talking to Jesus, as if Jesus was right there. And the presence of Jesus was strong in the room, and George could feel that, and he kept looking around, expecting Jesus to show himself in the room. And Mr. Rogers just continued to pray. Mr. Rogers had a relationship with Jesus that was real. And as George sat there listening, he thought, I have an education that is great. I'm smart. I know the Bible. I'm studying to be a minister. I know the things in the Bible. I know the stuff that's in the Bible. But I don't know this Jesus. I don't know this Jesus the way this man does. What's wrong with me? Why haven't I ever heard it like this? He listened for the rest of the time, and his heart was stirred. And that night when he got home, he left that prayer meeting, and he got home, and he thought, wait just a minute. There is something that is missing in my life. I want to be able to talk to Jesus the way that man did tonight. I want to have that kind of relationship with Jesus. I am so tired of doing the life that I've been doing. It's been a lot of silliness and a lot of partying, and it's so empty. And that man was a good, he was a strong businessman. And he talked to Jesus like he was talking to his best friend. I want that. And so there in his room, George knelt beside his bed. And it wasn't the prayers like he was being taught in college. They had their ritual prayers that they did. It wasn't those. This came from his heart. And he began to talk to Jesus just as if Jesus was in the room. And he began to confess his sins and ask a completely different person. He wasn't going to the pub. He wasn't going to the tap room. He was trying to learn more about Jesus. And he was taking his studies at the school seriously. Then one day he met a man named Herman Ball. Herman Ball was not a minister. He was a missionary. And George was a missionary. I could be a missionary. God, is that what you want? And boys and girls, God laid it on his heart. That's what he wanted him to be. And George was scared because how was he ever going to tell his father? His father was expecting him to be a minister because that's what he wanted him to be. Because ministers, he said, made lots of money. And missionaries didn't make much of anything. As a matter of fact, Herman Ball, he looked like he was in rags. But he could tell that he hadn't come from that. He was an educated man. He hadn't come from, like, slums. He obviously came from a family unit. And he asked him, he said, what's going on? He said, well, my dad was a big merchant. He made lots and lots of money. And when I decided that I was going to follow Jesus and I was going to be a missionary, my dad kicked me out. And I have not seen my parents since then. But I am following God because that's what my heart wants to do. That's what I want to do. I want to follow Jesus until the day that he comes to take me home. George thought about that, and he thought, how am I ever going to tell my father that I'm not going to be a minister? But the journey began. He left college to go home for a weekend to tell his father that he was not going to be a minister. As he got back to the house, they had a meal together. Father asked how the studies were going, and George said they're going good, actually. I have a paper here that I need you to sign, though. The college wants me to have you sign. About? Well, it's a paper that's saying that I want to leave ministry. I don't want to become a minister. Like, I don't want to be a preacher. It's saying that I'm going to change my major and become a missionary. Oh, what? I want to become a missionary. That's what God's asking of me. He's asking you to become a missionary. You're not going to become a missionary. Missionaries are poor. I want you to be a minister so that you can have the best house and you can have the best food and you can have everything you ever wanted. Because here where we live, ministers get paid really well. Missionaries get paid nothing. I'm sorry, Father. I'm going to be a missionary. Well, when I say no, I mean no, and I will not sign your paper, and you will not be a missionary. Well, I'm sorry, Father, I am going to be a missionary because I'm going to follow Jesus. And if that's something that you can't accept, I'm sorry, and I pray that God forgives you for telling me that I can't. Because I am following God. And if you want somebody to be proud of, you should be proud of me now because I'm following Jesus and I'm trying to do everything that Jesus wants me to do. Well, son, let me tell you something right now. You turn and you walk out that door. It's okay, Dad. Don't say words that you'll regret later. I'm going to turn and I'm going to walk out that door. And I'm never going to ask you for money again. Because my determination is that I'm back in this carriage. I have no money anywhere else. How am I ever going to do this? How am I ever going to finish college? How am I ever going to pay for it? I'm going to have to totally rely on God. Wow, that's really hard for me because I've normally relied on myself. I was like the king of my life. I didn't need anybody else. And now I'm going to have to rely for everything. For my education, for my food, for everything. Is God going to be able to, is he going to be able to supply all those needs for me? We'll have to come back tomorrow night and see what happens next in the life of George Mueller. I want you to stand. I'm going to need some help, though. Where's the girls? Amber, Regina. Can you guys come up here so that you can watch and decide who stands first, please? Because I can't even get the verse reference right, so goodness, I don't want to look away from my paper. All right. So, we're going to have 6 questions. Question number 1. What was the name of the mean guy in Luke's story?
In the green shirt? Or a blue
That's
shirt?
Kaden.
Yeah.
Kaden, who do you think it was?
Oh, sorry.
Yep, say it. Say what? Ask Cody. See if Cody knows, and then Cody can give you the answer. He's the guy right in front of you there, that big guy right in front of you. Ask him if he knows the answer, and then he can give it to you. Say it louder. Saul. His name pick something very quickly and head back to our seats. Okay. What was Saul doing? Your hands here, down, 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 down. Okay. What was Saul doing that made the Lord strike him with blindness?
Man.
Yeah, what were they? That's correct. Good job. They just put Christians, people that were following Jesus, in prison. That's correct. Okay, next question. What was that question? All right, ready? What did Ananias do for Saul for him to receive his sight? That is correct. Good job. And this is our last question. Last question. Whose power was Ananias using to heal Saul? Whose power was that?
Piper.
Correct. It was God's power. It was Jesus' power. Good job. All right. There will be questions each evening, so make sure you listen well to the stories, both of them, and we'll have questions tomorrow night from both stories. All right, so since Luke has the suitcase open, we'll start with kindergarten, this class. So, Kelsey, did you pick two people that would apply it?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Layla and Easton.
Layla and Easton, come on up front to Luke's suitcase and get yourself a prize. There's 5 nights, okay, so nobody gets upset, or Rachel will take the prizes away, because there's 5 nights, and that means everybody can have an opportunity. If you're sitting quietly, everybody has an opportunity to win a prize. Okay, Chris.
There were a couple possibilities, but the showman here in your shirt, you left your good body seat.
Okay. Come on up front here. I don't remember his name. Lincoln. Is that your name? Cool. Good job. All right. That's 3rd and 4th. Rhonda or later Brooks. Barb. Whoever.
One in the yellow shirt.
He's looking around going, I wasn't 5 person. Come on up here, guys. The yellow shirt. Come on up. That one? Okay, what is it? Both of them. Okay. 5 and 6. At this time, we're going to go ahead and have Ray, first one offering, to come on up front and tell us what we're doing for offering.
You pull weeds in your garden now. Ah, yeah, good parents. That's great. All right. What is the best vegetable that you like growing in your garden? Lettuce? What else? What do you like? That group? Cucumbers. What else? Carrots, okay? Someone else? Tomatoes. Jack. Cucumbers. Pete, what do you like? Corn. See, there's lots of vegetables you can plant in the garden, and there's lots of things you can enjoy because you plant the seeds, you pull the weeds, you water it, fertilize it, and then you have something you can enjoy. Well, this year's offering project, we are going to be buying seed packets for families that live in countries that can't grow food very well. In fact, some of these countries have famines. And so these seed packets are going to have seeds that are drought resistant, they will grow in extreme climates, and they will still have something to eat, something they can enjoy from their garden, that they can sustain their families. And so the money you bring in each night is going to be buying seed packets. So every $30 that we bring in is going to buy a seed packet for a family. And so we're going to have a boys offering project and we have a girls offering project. So we're going to see how much money we can raise this week and how many families we can help feed. Okay? By giving them seeds so they can plant the seeds so they can grow a garden for their families. And so tonight, I don't know how many of you knew we had an offering project, but you did very well. You brought in money tonight, so we already have some seed packets that we can buy. So how many do the boys have? How many seed packets do they buy tonight? Looks like we got some sweet corn. Okay, we got one seed packet here, and how about So the boys brought in $41.16. The girls brought in You're doing an excellent job. So see what you can do this week to earn some extra money. Maybe go pull weeds in the garden. And bring some allowance money and help feed families in poor nations.
All right, very good. Good job for the first night. That's awesome. Let's see how many vegetables we can get up there on that wall, okay? Let's make Linda work really, really hard to do vegetables, okay? All right. We'll get a little bookmark as you go out the door today that has your memory verse on it. I hope it has the right reference on it. You'll get that memory verse as you go out the door. Memorize that verse. If you memorize all on Friday, you will get a prize for memorizing them. If you come every day to Vacation Bible School, you will get a prize for perfect attendance. If you're on the side that wins the visitor contest and brings the most visitors on your side, then you'll get another prize. See, there's all kinds of opportunities for prizes this week, all right? So let's go ahead and sit up really straight. Be really quiet. We're going to have Pastor Luke come, and he's going to dismiss you with prayer tonight, okay? And we look forward to having each one of you back with us tomorrow night, and bring your friends with you, okay?
It's good to have you here. I encourage you to bring a visitor. Invite a friend for tomorrow night. And as you go out, we're going to dismiss from the front. Go back and make sure that you find your vehicle however you came. And don't be wandering around in the parking lot as the vehicles are pulling out. So let's close with that. Heavenly Father, thank you for the lesson tonight that your power will enable us to do hard things. And Lord, I pray that these boys and girls and teenagers remember that to walk with Jesus, you give them the power to live the way they need to live. Lord, I pray that you be with them this evening, be with our vehicles as they carry people home, and that you would provide safety to them. Thank you for your love for us in your name. Amen. All right, we're going to start with the front as we sing, and you're going to go out and find your way home, okay?